Bud Light was the straw that broke the camel's back. And this is what winning a culture war looks like. So pat yourselves on the back, ladies and gentlemen, because you decided not to buy a beer. You have seen tremendous victories in the culture war. In this tweet from End Wokeness, he says, Xbox removes their LGBTQ plus Pride logo 4 days into Pride Month. Wow. There are memes about this, where it's the guy looking at the camera saying it's coming and it's a tornado. And then it's all the corporate logos that are rainbows. It's the image of all of the corporate logos changed to rainbows, but in Saudi Arabia, they stay the same. And typically, they kept these logos up for some time. It's Pride Month. So it's like, oh, here we go. All the logos are going to be rainbows. And then I countered saying, MAGA month in July. Everybody put up pictures of American flags for the whole month. I kind of feel like we should just start doing it now, because we're seeing major institutions and corporations remove their pride flag logos. Forbes says Navy removes Pride Month posts amid right-wing backlash. NASCAR, Major League Baseball also targeted. Wow. Pride Month begins. And all these companies think they're going to play the culture war game, the pop culture game, and put up these flags. But after seeing what happened with Bud Light, apparently that's no more. It's done. Not every single corporation, of course, but many are saying the backlash that they're seeing from regular people is so intense that they're pulling these logos down. And that's all it took. How did we get to this point where every single company is putting up a flag about a person's sexuality? Because it was pop culture. Now, don't get me wrong. I know a lot of people talk about the Corporate Equality Index, CEI, and ESG scores and all of that stuff, and it matters to a certain degree. But if a corporation, if an institution thinks they will be harmed by doing a thing, they back off from doing it. That's the purpose of CEI and ESG. What these things are effectively are social credit scores. And it's environmental social governance, the ESG score that all these corporations are promoting. All of your banks are promoting it. They're doing it because it's a component required. It's a social credit score. I'll put it that way. And the way they see it, if we want to get loans, if we want to get financing, if we want to participate, we have to have good ESG scores. That's how everything's being handled these days. The Federal Reserve went woke. But what happens if you got a company that sells, let's say you got a company that plays baseball, Major League Baseball, and they have these banks saying, look, if you want financing from us for any of your endeavors, you've got to have good ESG scores. They say, okay, they will be harmed if they don't. You see how that works? But what happens then when all of their customers and their players say enough? Then they go to the bank and they say, look, financing is great, but why would we want to take any financing or a loan or any kind of credit if we can't pay it back because we have no customers? So they say, we'll take customers over debt. That's the power of being the consumer. And you know why we got this far? Because the far left did exactly what people are doing now. The far left would message a company, be like, why aren't you putting up a pride flag? And they'd be like, oh, we're getting a lot of heat for this. And they do it. And it's true. Vivek Ramaswamy talked about it. He said he worked for he started a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company. Dude's worth around $500 million. And he said that one day they come to him, I guess it was like his advisor or whatever, and said, you need to put up a black square on your social media profile to support George Floyd. And he was like, oh, okay, sure, I guess. And then he does. And he's not even thinking about it. Then they said, you need to write something. And he goes, sure. And then he wrote something like, I hope the country can come together and heal and that we stop fighting. And they came to him and said, this wasn't good enough. And he was like, I did what you asked. Then he had attacks from the far left, resignations from his friends and advisors at his company. And then he got pissed off and said, what is going on? Why am I being attacked? I didn't do anything. And that's what's happening. These companies were getting attacked and they're like, okay, well, everybody wants the pride flags up. But then people on the right stopped buying a beer. And it was that simple. Bud Light's sales are down near 30% and they're not recovering. I got another story. The ad agency behind that is in panic because they're the one who set it up. Imagine being the marketing agency behind the Bud Light scandal. Anybody who hires that company, wow, They got cojones, if you know what I mean. Like, let's roll the dice on this one. Talk about being wrong in marketing. As wrong can be. Typically a marketing campaign barely moves the needle. You buy an ad, you run commercials, and you hope you get some recognition, but earned media is always better. Imagine paying for marketing and ripping 30% of your market share straight out. You paid for that. Amazing. Take a look at this from Forbes. They say, companies daring to declare their support for Pride Month, including those that simply adopt a rainbow-colored logo for June, are facing online attacks from right-wing social media users, leading the Navy to delete its Pride posts as boycott threats against any company deemed woke for outreach to the LGBTQ community continue to go viral. And there it is. Continue to go viral. Do you get it? Continue to go viral. That's it right there. Regular people, the average person, they ain't paying attention. They don't know, they don't care. Where was I the other day? I was at the Charlestown races. I saw a lady, she was chatting it up, having a good time, and she goes, "Let me get a Bud Light," to the server. And I'm laughing to myself. I'm like, look, there are regular people who don't know, don't care, don't pay attention. They just want a light beer. And what am I going to do? Be like, "Ma'am, don't buy that." But no, you buy your beer. You do whatever you want. But what's happening now is that regular people who typically don't pay attention, who want attention, maybe it's a 22-year-old guy, and he's like, "I don't know or care about any of this stuff." But then all of a sudden he sees his buddy, 1 million views on TikTok. And he's going like, what? Maybe not TikTok, because they'll probably ban you for this. But he's got 1 million hits. He's got 10,000 likes. And he's like, well, how did he get so many hits? And then he looks, and it's his buddy filming himself in a gas station, pointing at Bud Light, going, "Duh, Bud Light's so dumb." And then he's like, yeah, I think Bud Light's dumb too. And then he starts filming videos. So many people are motivated by social acceptance. So many people that once it starts appearing to be popular, whether it is or isn't, regular people just embrace it to fit in. And that's partly the Pride phenomenon. Many people are just like, it's on TV, it's on social media, it's what you see. That's what we want to make. And that was driven by social media algorithms and the wokeness of these companies. They ban you if you don't, they promote you if you do. So what happens? People who make the videos get 1 million hits, and then everyone else is like, I want 1 million hits too. I want to be an influencer and a YouTuber and make all this money. But what about the people who stood strong, led the charge? The true heroes who never gave up. The people who pay attention to the news and politics said, here's what I think. And now you've got regular people seeing posts from them get so much traffic. Virality is the key. You want 1 million hits? You want to be a big famous YouTuber? Well, be honest. Call out the garbage, stand up to the woke mobs, and you'll get the hits. Because regular people do not like wokeness. So let me differentiate. The average person, when confronted with this, probably says, I don't like it. The average person online who doesn't know much about politics or anything, who is trying to be an influencer, is who I refer to when I say they just want the viral hits. But that creates a runaway train effect where the more videos they make, the more hits they get, the more everyone else wants to climb on board, and boom, social trend. And there it is. Look at this. The U.S. Navy uploaded a Pride-themed Facebook cover photo on June 1st, the first day of Pride Month, and replaced it with another photo less than 12 hours later. And it reportedly deleted posts for Pride Month from its Twitter and Instagram accounts. I say month because if they did Pride Day, I'd be like, whatever. If they were like, June 1st is Pride Day, it's where we go out and we celebrate people or whatever, and they did Pride, I'd be like, okay. And companies could put up their logo for a day and we'd all roll our eyes. But a month? That's just so ridiculous. NASCAR and Major League Baseball also tweeted in support of the LGBTQ community, and their posts were quickly filled with replies and quote retweets from angry right-wing users, quick to call for boycotts for companies who celebrate Pride or engage in LGBTQ inclusive marketing. And you know why that works? The Bud Light effect. Target has lost what? I haven't checked as of right now, but last week it was down $13 billion in market share. 13 billion with a B. And they've been doing the Pride stuff for a long time. The shift is here. You know what it could be too? It's that the younger generation cared more about politics. Always consider this. People often make the mistake that there's a great awakening. They think like, hey, how come all of a sudden people are saying no to these big brands? How come all of a sudden conservatives decided to boycott Bud Light? The answer is maybe they didn't. The real answer is younger people who grew up during the Gamergate culture war stuff in the 2010s, who are now old enough to drink, hate wokeness and have boycotted Bud Light. And so what the mistakes people make is they forget old people die and young people age up into a market share. And if the 16-year-olds of the 2010s who hated wokeness and were sick of the lies from the media and just wanted to play video games, who are now in their mid to late 20s and they drink Bud Light with their friends or they're in college, and then all of a sudden this comes down and they say, we're not buying it anymore, their market drops. And it's not like all of a sudden just Johnny conservative just went, well, I finally had the epiphany that I should stop supporting these companies. Now, I think older people mostly don't care. Seriously. I think they care about politics to a certain degree, but the boomers and many of the Gen Xers are probably still very much in the traditional Republican Democrat space. The culture war is a large phenomenon capturing people our age. And I'm 37, right? Is that middle age yet? I think middle age is like early 40s or something. But basically, 79. So yeah, I think around 39 to 40 is where so I'm close. But I'm the kind of person who should be buying the Bud Light for the party. And you know what? We would. Typically, we do better than Bud Light, to be completely honest. I would rather get a bunch of sixers of various microbrews or something. Not because I'm a microbrew snob or anything like that when it comes to beer. Just because it's good to have a bunch of different varieties. But if we were doing a big thing, we'd get a couple cases and just be like, beer's beer. Not anymore, we won't. So they lost people in our space. There's something really interesting in that I'll keep it light, but hearing about people running for office, hearing about people running for the highest office, and I know some people. Oh, the power just flickered. We're good though. I know some of these people that are talking about running for office at the local level, at the state level, and I'm like, man, these people very well may actually get into office. And it's crazy that it's people in our generation now taking the reins and taking over. But this is a normal process for all generations. It happens to every generation. You're a kid one day playing baseball, watching the TV about the president. And then one day you're in your 30s or 40s, and that kid you knew from grade school is running a big company, or he's a mid-level manager. You see him on TV giving an interview and you're like, wow. Or that kid you knew from high school or college is running for the Senate. And you're like, man, because you inherit this stuff. We all do. That's the rotation. And then there'll come a time when we are all old and there'll be some younger kids taking over. But this is the point. When it comes to all this stuff, these companies ditching these logos and everything, it's because you and I, the people who paid attention and are upset with this and think we don't want our country going in this direction, are becoming older and are becoming the dominant forces in market share. And they need to cater to us. And they're not. And they're quickly realizing that people our age, we're the money demo. That's right. 25 to 54? We're all in it. And right now, for those that are watching a show like this, for those that watch people like Sticks, Hex, and Hammer or Crowder or Jimmy Dore, we're it. We're the key demo. Now, he gets millions of views on Fox News, but it was people older than that. I think the average age was like mid to late 60s. And that's true for cable TV. They are not in the money demographic anymore. They're retirees, so they're on budgets. We are the demographic that is now deciding, hey, we're having a corporate party. What do we buy? We did a big event. We certainly ain't buying Bud Light anymore. We are the ones who are using the resources and running the companies, creating corporate events, having picnics, having barbecues, setting up shows and deciding. We did an event in Austin, sold out show at the Vulcan Gas Company. I think it's Gas Company, right? And I said, no Anheuser-Busch products. And they went, it's your show. And then everyone laughed and cheered. That's Michelob Ultra. That's Bud Light. I think we mistakenly pulled Modelo. Maybe we didn't, actually. I think that one we were like, well, we don't know for sure. I can't remember. But we said no Bud Light. And nobody wanted it anyway. We had another event here in West Virginia. And I asked the bartender if he had Bud Light. And he goes, well, we do. But it was not on display. And I was like, no Bud Light. And he goes like, we have it, but nobody's going to order it. So we just don't put it out. And he's like, I guess if somebody really wants one, we'll give it to him, but no one's going to do it. Nobody wants to be the guy at the party carrying the Bud Light. And so this is what's happening now. We are coming into our social power, as it were. People like you and me expressing our distaste for these things is working. Unilad has the story. Xbox divides opinion after taking down its Pride Month logo after just a few days. You know what I think it is? I think it's that the younger generation. Look, I'm gonna tell you again. The future is conservative, and it's funny how I think Newsweek and the New York Post recently called me a conservative, and it just literally makes no sense because they can't define what conservative is. And if I'm conservative, oh boy, I don't know what Seamus Coughlin from Freedom Tunes is. Far right. Yeah. See, that's the game they play. A traditional conservative is far right. A moderate liberal is now conservative. That's insane. I'm actually fairly progressive. It's so weird. I just don't care for the cult Marxist garbage. Fairly liberal. But I think what we're seeing now is, as I stated before, let me show you the math. In the early 2000s, there were several studies done. They found that conservatives were having 2.01 kids and liberals were having 1.43, I think it was. Conservatives were at replacement level reproduction and liberals were not. We saw a poll a few years ago from Pew, a research study, poll, that showed that Generation Z ticked slightly more conservative than in some areas than millennials, but were comparable. And that's a revolution. Because typically every generation is more progressive than the last. And Gen Z is the first time we see stagnation and actually a shift slightly towards conservative. But how can that be? It is not that all of a sudden there's a great awakening among a generation. It's that conservatives have more kids. I'm telling you, we're going to win. Because as we get older, there are more conservative children growing up than there are liberal ones. Now keep in mind, I warn a lot of people on the right, these Democrats are going to come vote. The young kids, they'll rally a lot of them. You need to rally the young conservative generation, the children of conservatives. They must go out and vote. And they are much more likely, in my opinion, to be receptive to this kind of messaging. But to put it simply, my friends, if the liberals, the left, if they're aborting their kids, if they're sterilizing their kids, the end result is clear. Their birth rates were already very low at 1.4. I think 1.43 was the number in the 2000s. That means at that time, let's just say, I think it's 2007. It might have been 2000. It might have been a few years between like 03 and 07. Let's just say 2005. There you go. Bang. 2005. They said, hey, we just realized in the past couple of years, conservatives have had 0.5, well, actually 0.6, rounding just about, more kids than liberals. That means, what is it? For every 4 conservatives, there are 3 liberals. For every 4 conservatives born, 3 liberals. Now, a lot of people say, yeah, but they're going to indoctrinate those kids and turn them woke. That's true. So that could create a fairly even split. And that's why we saw in the polling, Gen Z and millennials are fairly comparable, but conservative ideals want a little bit more. What happens when this conservative generation reaches the voting age, which is, hey, how about that? Just about now. We are now 20 years on from this study, and we are starting to see the children of this generation, of this birthing period, vote and express their opinions online, make social media posts. The wokeness can't win. It's just simple math. And now that they're ramping up their calls for abortion, advocating more for abortion and sterilization, you think they're going to win now? They're certainly not having more kids. They're having less kids. They're aborting their kids more, and they're sterilizing some of the ones they do have. Granted, to be fair, the sterilization stuff is only a few thousand. It's not as big as people might think it is. It's not like in the millions or anything. But they're also promoting, let's just say, atypical proclivities, which will increase the likelihood these people do not have children. To put it nicely, look, 2 guys hooking up don't have a kid. All right. 2 women hooking up don't have a kid. A dude who dresses up like a dog and marches around on the ground probably ain't having kids because they're not engaging in behaviors that is conducive to having a family and raising children. That means now we're seeing it. we are going to start seeing a surge in conservative victories because independents are more likely to be siding with conservatives on many social issues, not all of them, moderates and disaffected liberals. Jimmy Dore, the dude's very lefty economically. But as these young people grow up, it's this simple. You will get more views on conservative content. You will get a bigger backlash for pride stuff. You will sell more product if you embrace anti-woke stuff. The trend is happening due to the children. They're old enough now. How many of you watching are in your mid-20s? Seamus is in his mid to late 20s. We've got Mary Morgan on Pop Culture Crisis, early 20s. We have a wide range of people who work for Timcast, but typically the age, I think Ian might be the oldest person who works here. He's in his mid-40s. Early to mid 40s. I think he's the oldest. Oh, actually, no. I think Phil doesn't work for us, but as a recurring guest on IRL and a co-host, he's in his mid to late 40s. But we have a lot of people in our 20s here. These are the kind of people that, and I tell you, they're not hardcore conservative Bible thumpers. Some are, Seamus is very devout. But we have some young people here who are just moderates, like this woke stuff's crazy. And I'll tell you this, there's a mix. It's not just that every kid's conservative, every kid's liberal. A lot of young people, neutral, don't care. But what happens when you get 1 million views for saying woke is bad, but you get 500,000 for saying woke is good? Those kids in the middle are just like, I can see what's popular. And the shift is real. That's why we're seeing this. So pat yourselves on the back, ladies and gentlemen. We got some more news coming up about Bud Light, and we can talk about winning some culture wars. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.